My dear George, a psychologist never saw a fact in his life. He only hears about feelings. Vague things. This doesn't feel good, I tell you. Trust my hunches and my instincts. I have a nose for something bad. This is very bad. My advice to you is to have the whole damn room torn down and your children brought to me every day during the next year for treatment. This quote from Ray Bradbury's science fiction story, The Veldt, were the words that first sparked my interest in my topic. The story revolves around two 10-year-old twins, Peter and Wendy, and their unhealthy obsession with their virtual reality nursery. This nursery, which morphs into the child's desires, ultimately ruins their relationship with their parents. Through The Veldt, Ray Bradbury teaches us that a child's life is heavily influenced by their parents' decisions. If their parents had exerted more authority over their children or limited their access to technology, there might have been a better outcome. But is that always true? And to what extent? Hi, I'm Prapti, and my presentation revolves around the following question. How can we understand the roots of bullying by examining early childhood home life? My project began in late October. I had lots of questions swirling around in my head by then. What are some long-term effects of a negative home life? Can these negative consequences be overturned? What steps can families take to ensure a positive future for their child? At first, I was overwhelmed with the vast amount of information I found online. It would be near impossible to research all the factors. So, this project provides a general overview on how various external factors impact youth. On November 21st, I made the first entry in my research journal. The first article I viewed was by the Urban Child Institution. Their work explored the idea of risk factors. A risk factor is a condition that is statistically associated with a given outcome. For instance, poverty, maternal depression, and maternal education are all factors associated with outcomes such as academics, cognitive development, and social and emotional well-being. The first risk factor that I learned about were negative early life experiences, which have a major impact on how the brain architecture develops. In the first few years of life, approximately 1 million neural connections form, but these connections are later reduced via a process known as synaptic pruning. Wait, synaptic pruning? What does that mean, you may wonder? Let's first define what a synapse is. Synapses are structures that enable neurons to send chemical and electrical signals to each other. Synaptic pruning starts near the time of birth and continues until the late 20s. Some phases in synaptic pruning are influenced by genetics, while others are affected by our daily experiences. Any errors in this process can cause neurodevelopmental problems like autism or schizophrenia, but synaptic pruning is still a very important part of our growth. Between the ages of 2 and 3, our brain explodes with information. This process is scientifically referred to as synaptogenesis. It helps with learning, memory formation, and early life adaptations. Soon after, the brain begins to prune the unused old synapses to allow for new ones to develop. It's like deleting old apps to make other frequently used apps function better. Constant stimulation causes synapses to grow and become permanent, but if a child receives little to no stimulation, the brain will keep fewer of those connections. By the age of 3, the child may have poor language development, behavior issues, impaired cognitive development, and school readiness deficits. The skills acquired in the first 3 years are related to high school graduation, teen parenthood, adult employment, and salary. According to a study by Candle that researched 1,500 women in Shelby County and their children, in general, a lower income affects parenting style, which in turn hinders optimal development. Poor and low-income families are more likely to have a chaotic home environment as the parents become more stressed out and unresponsive. They exhibit less sensitivity and offer less cognitive stimulation. On average, low-income moms tend to be less affectionate, harsh, and less responsive to their baby's distress signals. They participate in activities with them less frequently compared to middle income.
We don't have time to help you with your homework like good parents should. We're watching our favorite show, The Bad Parent Hunter.
Yeah, so here, go play with this dangerous acid in the street.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Children may also have fewer stimulating experiences and learning materials. Consequently, they may also have lower cognitive scores and may have behavioral problems. In another study conducted by BMC Public Health, those who had a lot of negative childhood experiences were more prone to depression and anxiety, substance abuse, and other harmful health behaviors. Parenting style and behaviors are passed down to their offspring. Parents with unresolved emotional issues as children were worse at parent kid attachments. They also use more terrifying methods of parenting. However, positive characteristics are also forwarded. For example, children raised in a positive environment behave similarly to their parents. All this information was super interesting, and I love digging deep into my topic. However, there was another worry arising. One of the requirements of this assignment was to conduct an interview with an expert in order to gain a better understanding of my subject. I was completely stumped as to who I could interview. The deadline was approaching, and I could no longer push back the interviews. I spent a while browsing the internet for experts. By early December, I started to get some luck. I came across an entire website of professors who are an expert on my topic. This was the primary source of interviewees for me. I structured the email asking for permissions and sent them on the same day. I spent the rest of class period researching. I remember Mr. Gerasi mentioning an interesting article about the benefits of eating together with family during one of our conferences. So, I decided to take a look at the website and learn some interesting things. Children who ate with their families on a regular basis performed better academically. Catherine Snow, a researcher, discovered that children had better vocabulary and reading skills. Similar findings have been made by other universities. The University of Illinois, for example, stated that they perform better on standardized tests. The University of Columbia, on the other hand, claims that they have higher overall grades. Looks like all those dinner conversations help them communicate better. Aside from academics, it also discourages them from making poor decisions. The American Diabetes Association polled 1,500 high school students and once more in their 20s. Those who ate with their families ate healthier. They also developed positive lifelong habits such as maintaining a healthy diet and being less picky. Children were also found to be less likely to smoke, drink alcohol, or use drugs, according to a 2008 study by the Center for the Advancement of Health. It is unclear why they were less likely to participate in these activities, but researchers believe that it is because families who tend to be closer guide teens the right way. Wow, that's so cool! I never knew something so minor could have so much significance in someone's... When I checked my email, I did not expect anyone to respond yet. I was wrong. I was pleased to see that I had received responses from my interviewees, both of whom agreed. I was extremely happy. It had not even been a day. Since it was a Friday, I spent some time at home writing my questions. I received my last few interview permissions over the next few days. Unfortunately, they were unavailable. According to Merriam-Webster, bullying is the abuse and mistreatment of someone vulnerable by someone stronger, more powerful, etc. The actions and behavior of a bully. 28% of children between the grades 6 to 12 experience bullying. However, only 20 to 30% of these people report it, and with the increase of devices, cyberbullying cases have also increased. 15% of people have experienced cyberbullying. Bullying has a significant impact on victims. Often, they suffer from low self-esteem and self-doubt. Many children hide it from their parents out of embarrassment. Their school performance also starts to suffer as they no longer want to go to school. They may become more irritable and less connected. Over time, this decreases the overall family closeness. I knew prior to having begun my interviews that I wanted to hear from a former bully and victim. So, I asked some relatives from India who had vaguely told me about their experiences before if I could interview them. Let's hear more about bullying from a former victim. But, for the sake of privacy, I won't be using their name. How old were you when you got bullied?
I first met her when I was in first grade, but our friendship didn't become physically violent until later.
And when was that?
It is hard to pinpoint an exact time. I'm not completely sure when I met her, but I know that we were childhood friends for a long time. She was a year older than me.
What did they bully you about?
She would go from being nice to being very violent. It was very hard to predict her mood. Sometimes she would get angry that I didn't invite her to something, or she would be mad that I was doing something cool without her. I never actually ended up getting to fight back because the bullying ended when I moved away to Canada.
What is something you think you should have done?
I recall this one time when they were offering karate lessons in our apartment. I thought it was a good way to learn self defense and be stronger. I believed that this was my opportunity to fight back, so I joined the classes. This backfired on me as we were close friends and she wanted to take the classes together. Now she had a legal way to beat me up.
Have you learned something from this?
At the time when I was growing up, bullying was one of those things which were still being worked on. There were not many resources or materials given in class on what to do. I think that it is one of the reasons why it felt odd complaining about it. I think in today's landscape, it would be harder to get away with what she did because of how many open conversations we have in classes. This is not to say that bullying has ceased to exist, but just that it's harder to commit.
What piece of advice would you give to victims?
I would say that it is better to speak up. If you find that the adults in your life don't listen, I would recommend being persistent and finding evidence. Also, given that there is a lot of help nowadays, it is easier to find someone willing to listen.
Harvard University published an article called For Both Bullies and Their Victims, Victimization Plays a Role. In some instances, people are victimized and then go on to mistreat others. They are like a bully victim. They tend to be depressed, disengaged from school, and have problems with self-control. This proves that bullying is rarely simple. There isn't always going to be the stereotypical, athletically inclined yet unintelligent bully. Some are completely oblivious to their bullying. For instance, consider this next interview with a former bully who was willing to speak up about their experiences. Did you realize that you were bullying? Who told you that you were?
I never realized that I was bullying since I didn't physically harm them. When you beat somebody, you know that it is wrong. I now know that what I did was not a good decision and sincerely regret it. But I find that it is harder to differentiate between bullying and mean comments, especially when it's coming from you. I only came to know about this issue when a friend pointed it out to me.
If you would have known a piece of advice before, would you have changed things?
A lot of the bullying could have been prevented if I paid more attention to how they felt. I never thought that my words were hurtful, but it is not the bully's perspective that mattered. If the other person feels uncomfortable, then I should stop.
Were you ever bullied?
When I was in my first year at that school, I was bullied by a senior as well. That bully used to chase after me in the corridor. The fact that no one took action on that validated his choices.
Similar to victims, bullies may experience issues later on in life. When compared to victims, those who have bullied in grades 6 to 9 were 60% more likely to have a criminal conviction by the age of 24, and 5 times more likely to have serious criminal records. Bullies progress to causing problems in the workplace. According to the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, workplace bullying costs the economy $3 billion in lost productivity and $19 billion in lost employment each year. My next interview was through emails. I had a discussion with developmental and educational psychologist and professor at the University of British Columbia, Dr. Himmel. Here are some highlights of our conversation. My first question was, how does bullying affect those who observe it? And this was her response. It can serve as a role model, with some observers considering adopting similar behaviors, but others may see it and learn what not to do or be. It would seem to mostly depend on how the observer, with his or her own experiences, interprets and reacts to the event. Some observers will become defenders, who then consider how they can support or help the victim, either directly or indirectly. Others may try to befriend the bully, thinking that this is a good way to protect themselves from being a target. My next question was, is bullying often learned or gained through a difficult home life? Are there any other factors? Her answer was that it is not necessarily the case that a difficult home life automatically leads to bullying, although for some it may. There is some evidence that bullying by older siblings can contribute, or abuse by parents, both of whom can serve as role models for bullying. It is more accurate to think of bullying as a born of many factors, including television and movies that glorify aggression, peer groups that promote bullying, personality characteristics, for example, a lack of empathy for others, etc. There are always multiple contributing factors. My final question was, why do people not focus on bullies as much as they do the victims? This was true in initial research and efforts to understand bullying, but at this point, The focus has been on both and even more on the larger influence of the peer group. There is a lot of research lately on the finding that children who bully morally disengage. That is, they may know at some level that bullying behaviors are bad, but they justify and rationalize such negative behavior to make it seem okay. For example, thinking that the victim deserved it, or that they really weren't doing anything wrong, but were just joking around, or that it toughens kids up. Recent research has shown that one thing that we can do to address bullying is to stop such moral justifications, help kids to see that it is not okay, not just joking around, etc. And there has been some demonstrated success with such efforts. Upon reading her responses, I gained a lot of new insight into my topic. Before I continue, I'd like to express my gratitude. I was provided with tons of information that helped me throughout the course of my research. I also visited some of the websites she recommended. PrevNet, for example, was a very useful source that provided a lot of information to add to this section. I was also given a report written by her and some other professors. It was 19 pages long, so it took some time, but I definitely benefited a lot from reading it. Before this project, I always thought that bullying was directly linked to a difficult home life. However, I quickly learned that it isn't always the case. People are very complicated, and there are a variety of factors that can play a role in our personality. To summarize everything that has been stated thus far, a child's life is affected by external factors such as status, parenting style, neglect, and other negative factors. Based on their previous experiences, they may take certain actions later in life. Though it is never too late to intervene, it is always preferable to prevent it from happening in the first place. All the new information I learned was captivating. However, I believe that the true lesson I learned was the skills I gained along the way. The process of reaching my conclusion was a long and treacherous path. Prior to the iSearch, I have handled similar projects, but never to this scale. There were a lot of first-time experiences like interviewing. This is a skill that I would like to improve on in the next upcoming iSearch. When preparing my research outline, I briefly skimmed through people I could interview. However, I still had no idea who I could interview. This began to worry me and led me to procrastinate for some time. But as I dug deeper, I realized that there were several possibilities. Next time, I want to take more risks in terms of interviewing people. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching and have a great day.